circumstances of Henry's death and his treatment in the final moments. So how will the Secretary of State ensure that those lessons are learned and that Henry's family are put first and fully considered? And on knife crime, how will we ensure that the root causes are dealt with and that resources are provided to agencies but also communities?
Home Secretary.
Well, let me assure her that the Knife Crime Action Plan is funded, and we have put significant money behind violence reduction units and other measures that we know are absolutely imperative in dealing with knife crime in our country. And let me assure her again, as soon as the IOPC investigation is concluded, I will make sure the House is updated.
Sir Julian Lewis.
Is it normal police practice to handcuff a person lying helpless on the ground and clearly offering no resistance? And given her admirable and utter rejection of differential treatment of people according to their race, will she undertake to examine and withdraw the policing policy document identified by the Shadow Home Secretary as embodying precisely such differential treatment?
Secretary.
Well, let me say to him on policing practice and the specifics of this case, that is precisely what the IOPC is looking at, because they take into account context and what the expectations of police officers are, given the specific contexts of danger that they face. And the IOPC will look into that. Once they've made their findings of fact, I will, of course, return to the House. And let me say again, look, on the issue of differential treatment, he will know, he is a member of long-standing in this House. We've had many debates where, from the opposite end of the race spectrum, if I might put it like that, today we are talking primarily about the white community in this instance, but there have been many debates in this House about differential treatment for minority communities as well. It's why I say I don't think it's helpful for us to look at this through a community-specific lens. It is much broader than that. I will, of course, make sure that I always engage with the police on the specifics of their policies, but it is not my view that the police are institutionally or systemically operating a system of differential treatment, and we will always make sure that we guard against that, and I will work with the police to make sure that never happens.
Toby Perkins.
Well, thank you very much, Deputy Speaker. I welcome the Home Secretary's fierce rejection of two-tier policing or any suggestion that people should be judged differently according to their colour. The footage that we saw was one of the most sickening things that I've ever seen, and my heart goes out to the Nowak family who had to witness that. She's absolutely right to say that we must wait for the IOPC investigation, but if it does turn out that some kind of misguided application of the culture of policing has led to the victim being not believed while the murderer was believed, what more will she be able to do to make sure that every single police officer hears loud and clear her message that everyone deserves to be policed regardless of the colour of their skin in exactly the same way?
Secretary.
Well, let me give my honourable friend that assurance that as soon as the IOPC investigation has concluded and they have made their findings in relation to the specific circumstances of this case, I will make sure we return to this House so that we have an opportunity to debate collectively what the correct response will be. But let me just reassure him and everybody else, I will never stand for a system where there is any suggestion of differential treatment before the law. We are all equal before the law, and every lesson that we learn must always live up to that abiding principle.
Suella Braverman.
Deputy Speaker. Henry Nowak was murdered near my constituency of Fareham and Waterlooville, and local people are rightly furious with Hampshire Police, those officers who attended the scene, but also those leading the force. It's important to remember that Henry's murderer accused him of racism, and in honour of Henry's legacy, it's important that we're all abundantly clear. The judge found absolutely zero evidence to back up that claim. Does the Home Secretary agree that a false accusation of racism against a white person is just as bad, if not worse, than a legitimate claim of racism because of the deceit? Does she also agree that watching that body cam footage, it is clear that police officers treated Henry with disdain and contempt and arguably negligence because of the colour of his skin? We are hearing Number 10 say that two-tier policing does not exist. Home Secretary, where is the leadership today? British people are furious. The leadership is not coming from the government.
Home Secretary.
Well, let me say I disagree with her entirely. I think that good leadership in these circumstances, actually great leadership has already been shown by the family of Henry Nowak in the tenor of their response and their statement and their desire, rightly in my view, to not see this murder be used as a tool of furthering division in our country. And I think we could all do well to take our lead from Henry's family. But let me also say to her, I am in the House today, I'm answering questions. I've undertaken to come back once the IOPC investigation has concluded. She is a former Home Secretary. She will know these independent arrangements exist so that people can have confidence in the findings that are made in cases such as this, and to know that they are done without political interference or for political ends. Let me say to her on the broader question, point that she made at the start of her contribution on false allegations, lies are lies and they must be called out as such, and where a lie is criminal or leads to criminality, it must face the full force of the law. That is what has happened in this case. There has been a measure of justice because the criminal case has concluded and the murderer has been found guilty of murder, and the judge has made further findings in relation to the circumstances of this case. And again, I would urge her and some of her colleagues, when commenting on this case, they stick to the facts as they have been established.
Jazz Athwal.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. And can I thank the Home Secretary and the Shadow Home Secretary for the way they introduced this very sensitive issue. The murder of Henry Nowak was a wicked act of brutality. His family and all those who loved him have been left with an unimaginable grief, mourning their brother, their son, and their friend, who they'll never, ever get back. I know members across the House share my devastation at this vile murder by this vile individual. However, some members have been using the horrific incident as political capital, spreading disinformation for their own gain. Does the Home Secretary agree that politicians have a responsibility to act with decorum, to focus on Henry, who lost his life, and his grieving family, who've lost a son, a brother, rather than fan the flames of division?
Home Secretary.
I agree with my honourable friend, and I do believe on this matter we should take our lead from Henry's family, who I think have set an example for us all to follow.
Dr. Luke Evans.
I've been stabbed versus he racially abused me. How's the government going to rebuild public confidence in our culture and institutions that are tempted to rank people by their perceived oppression rather than judging each person on their own actions and the reality?
Yeah, very good.
Secretary.
Well, look, let me just repeat to the honourable gentleman the point I've already made in this debate. There can be no suggestion of two-tier policing in our country. In the vast majority of cases, the police apply the law fairly and without fear or favour, and they must always do so. Once the IOPC investigation has concluded, I'll make sure that the specific lessons from the circumstances of this case are learned and acted upon.
Bailey.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. This crime was a vile act and a crime of the utmost severity, and I'm pleased that it's been treated as such by our courts. This is a case about a murder of a young man, and our thoughts should remain with Henry Nowak's family. We do not know why the officers acted as they did, but there is nothing in the Macpherson inquiry that can be blamed upon the apparent lack of humanity displayed in the body-worn camera footage. Does the Home Secretary agree with me that we should reflect upon the words of Henry's father, Mark Nowak, who asked that his son's death should not be used to create further division, hatred or tension? And does she agree that this is entirely what the interventions of the member of Clacton and others seek to do?
Home Secretary.
Look, I thank my honourable friend for his contribution. Let me say I do agree with him. He's right to refer to the words of Henry's father. Many members have referred to those words rightly today, and it is something that we should all bear in mind. Let me just reiterate again, I will ensure that all of the lessons that must be learned from this case are learned and are acted upon properly, but this case turns on its own facts and its own own circumstances and is not to be used, in my view, to unwind other changes that were made in order to rebuild public confidence in policing.
Thomas.
Madam Deputy Speaker, this cowardly murder is not a reflection upon the Sikh community, which has integrated itself with honour and modesty into the UK. I understand that the weapon wielded was not that traditionally carried by Sikhs. I however, believe that this murder may give reasonable grounds to review existing exemptions to knife legislation on the grounds of religious reasons and national dress. I know that the Home Secretary wants to halve knife crime within the next 10 years. What message do these exemptions give? Is she honestly going to rule out at least a review?
Home Secretary.
Well, let me just say to the honourable gentleman, as I've said earlier in this debate, our religious freedoms and the arrangements we have are long-standing and have been designed to strike the right balance between religious freedom and public protection. I have said earlier in this debate that the wider question is something that is worthy of serious consideration, which is what I will give to it. But I would want to start that process by discussing with the Sikh community themselves, to knife crime campaigners and also the police about this matter. That I think is the right way to proceed rather than launching a formal review, because actually, as the judge found in this case, this was not an act of religious observance. The minute that knife was unsheathed to be used, it became a murder weapon, and the murderer has now faced the full force of the law.
Alex Baker.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. My thoughts are with the family and friends of Henry Nowak. It was absolutely gut-wrenching to see the video footage of the body-worn camera. In Hampshire, this murder has left people deeply shocked, not only by the violence of the act, but by the circumstances as he lay dying. I'm pleased to hear that the IOPC will have the resources they need to fully investigate, and I'm also glad to hear that the Hampshire Police and Crime Commissioner has said that she will ensure that those recommendations are fully implemented. Mistakes have clearly been made, but will the Home Secretary ensure that Hampshire and Isle of Wight Constabulary receive any support needed to implement the IOPC findings in full, and that lessons on victim recognition, officer judgment and impartiality are acted on swiftly?
Home Secretary.
Yes, I can give my honourable friend that assurance, and in fact the Policing Minister met with the Police and Crime Commissioner earlier on today.
Shaukat Adam.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. We do not want Henry's murder to be used to create further hatred, division or tension. Those are the words of a heartbroken father, and I pray we all heed them in this House. This is a heinous crime made all the worse by the shocking police response, and there must be lessons. So can I ask the Home Secretary what she is going to do differently to crack down on the epidemic of knife crime, possibly a dedicated knife crime minister, and what steps will she take to ensure that our Sikh community, overwhelmingly peaceful and overwhelmingly integrated, are not held collectively responsible by those that wish to divide us?
Home Secretary.
Let me just say to him on knife crime, the government has a landmark commitment to halve the levels of knife crime in this country over the next decade. We have our landmark knife crime action plan. It is a funded action plan. The Prime Minister has taken a personal interest in that commitment, and this government will strain every sinew to deliver on that.
Graham's figure.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. In the 80s and 90s in this country, many police officers carried out their duties in a prejudicial and racist way. And I'm proud, together with many others, of having worked to eliminate that racism as much as we could. We're now left with maybe a more difficult problem to deal with. Many police officers and other public servants are now frightened that they will be accused of racism in carrying out those duties. What action does the Home Secretary think she can take and the Cabinet can take to reassure people who are accused of racism that proper process will affect them and it won't just leave them out of a job forever?
Home Secretary.
Well, let me say firstly, that my honourable friend is right to remind the House of the historic context in relation to policing in this country and on the question of racism itself. And many minority communities have been on the receiving end of that treatment in the past. It is right that the system as a whole has sought to learn those lessons and to deliver a policing service that we can all be confident in and to know that we are all treated fairly under the law. That is what I will ensure continues to be the case going forward. I would say to him on the question of accusations, when accusations are made, whether in a legal and policing context or indeed throughout other parts of the public sector, they are just that, they are accusations, and we should remember the principles of our broader justice system when it comes to innocence and findings of guilt and the fairness of procedures to give people a chance to explain themselves without findings of fact being made against them before that has happened. I would expect to see that happen throughout the criminal justice system, but also throughout wider society as well.
Geopolitics.
Thank you. When the race card was played by his murderer, was Henry Nowak treated differently because of the colour of his skin, causing the innocent victim to be handcuffed and the murderer pandered to?
3.
Well, the reaction of the police officers who attended the scene to the circumstances that they faced is what the IOPC is investigating. Once that investigation is complete and findings of fact are made, I'll be happy to discuss the further lessons with him and others in this House.
Chris Webb.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker, and I join colleagues across the House offering my thoughts and prayers to Henry's family for his vile and disgusting murder. Unfortunately, we're seeing those far-right groups in Blackpool and across the country using Henry's death and weaponising it to create more hatred. So can the Home Secretary join me in condemning those in Blackpool and across the country and make sure that we honour the powerful call from his family who don't want it to be used for further division, hatred or tension in this country?
Well, let me join with my honourable friend and members across this House in condemning the actions of the far right utterly. They are completely unacceptable and we should all take a stand against them. Weaponising this horrifying murder, this terrible tragedy for the Nowak family in order to spread further division is not what this moment requires, and I hope that that can have broad support from across the House.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. My thoughts are with Henry's family. As I listened to his dad yesterday, I couldn't help but cry myself at the loss that they have suffered and the fact that that video footage is etched on their mind forever. Madam Deputy Speaker, it appears in the UK we have an undercurrent of anti-white racism brewing. We see white people jailed for allegedly inciting racial hatred on social media, but members of other communities not even prosecuted for viciously attacking police officers. Henry Nowak deserved better. He did not deserve to be attacked. He did not deserve to spend his final moments pleading for help and saying he could not breathe. He did not deserve not to be believed. Above all, he did not deserve to die. Why did it take this government until yesterday to speak out on this matter whilst running to virtue signal on many other cases? Is the UK no longer a safe place for people like Henry Nowak?
Look, I do say to the Honourable Lady, the reason the government hasn't commented until yesterday is because there was a criminal case that was going through our courts. Members of this House and certainly members of the government are not commentators for the purposes of social media. They are ministers of the Crown and they must respect the independence of our criminal justice system and the ability of our courts and our independent legal processes to function so that when findings of fact are made, a conviction happens and a sentence is passed, it commands public confidence across the whole country because everyone knows it has not been interfered with politically. It is an independent assessment of the facts of a case. And I would remind her and all members that that is the responsibility we all have, and I would urge her to reflect on that.
Tom Rutland.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker, and I thank my right honourable friend for her statement, and can I offer my condolences to Henry Nowak's family who've been through an appalling ordeal. What assurances can my right honourable friend provide that Henry Nowak's family's concerns regarding the initial police response are being fully considered by the relevant authorities, that lessons will be learned from this terrible incident so that no other family has to see their loved one doubted in their final moments by those who should be helping them.
Home Secretary.
Yes, let me give that assurance to him and through him to the family, as I've done so earlier, and in particular in my statement today. They asked a specific question of me when they responded yesterday, and I have met that challenge, and I will ensure we continue to meet that challenge and that they get the answers that they need and that they deserve.
Final question, Tristan Osborne.
Thank you very much, Madam Deputy Speaker. And can I thank the Home Secretary for coming to the House today? And can I also extend the sympathies on behalf of my constituents to the family of Henry Nowak in what is a heinous and horrific crime. There is speculation online about the identities of these police officers, and it's also putting other officers at risk across the country due to the irresponsible speculation of extreme right groups and others which are fanning the flames of tension. Yeah. Can the Home Secretary confirm to me what we are doing to protect our officers on a daily basis in regards to this, and also comment on this irresponsible speculation that is being undertaken online?
Speculation online is not just irresponsible, it is wholly unacceptable. And as I said in my statement earlier, we should all take a stand against that. It is putting people who are not connected with this case at risk, but also for the officers that have been connected to this case, there is a proper process that must be allowed to take its course, that will investigate their conduct and make the appropriate findings in the proper way. We should all in this House stand up for the independence of that process, the space for that process to conclude, so that once it has concluded, we can debate thoroughly the lessons that must be learned.
That is the end of... point of order, Jen Croft.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. On the 21st of May at Business Questions, the Honourable Member for Newark asked a question relating to the murder of my constituent Henry Nowak. At the time, the case against his murderer was still ongoing. The member for Newark gave numerous details of the crime itself, including accusations that had been made by the now convicted murderer. I'm led to believe that matters subject to ongoing criminal cases are considered sub judice, and members should not speak about the details of such cases due to the risk of prejudicing proceedings, and in the worst case scenario could cause a mistrial. Can he imagine the impact that would have had on my constituents to have had to go through the trauma and horror of a trial, only to have to go through it again because a politician had been impatient and reckless? I would be grateful for your advice, Madam Deputy Speaker, on how members should conduct themselves when wishing to raise matters that are sub judice, and whether the member for Newark owes an apology to the members of this House who have abided by this convention, respecting the family's right to justice, and who he has repeatedly castigated online, and if indeed he owes an apology to my constituents who themselves have refrained from publicly giving voice to their justified horror at the initial police response until the trial has concluded, to make sure that their loved one could receive justice.
I thank the honourable member for giving notice of her point of order and understand that she has indeed informed the member for Newark in advance. The House's sub judice resolution is a significant self-imposed restriction on freedom of speech in this House. Its purpose is to prevent prejudice to individual cases and to preserve comity with the courts. As she notes, the clerks in the table office are always happy to advise members on the sub judice rule and its application to proceedings. It is, however, ultimately the member's responsibility to avoid infringing the sub judice rule and to exercise freedom of speech responsibly. Point of order, Carla Lockhart.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker, and apologies for not giving prior notice, but it's pertaining to the answer that was given to me in the previous session. Could she advise if records can be checked from the front benches as to whether or not this House discussed and debated the murder of the 3 little girls in Southport before the murderer was sentenced, and also in the case of Sir David Amos, because I believe both were brought to this House before the murderer was sentenced?
The honourable member did not give me prior notice of her point of order. First of all, the chair is not responsible for the content of the speeches or the contributions made by back benches, let alone the front benches. I do not have the information to hand about those two particular issues that she's raised, but no doubt the clerk can provide that information in a moment or two whilst they look up that research or that bit of information that she so requires. As the member will know as well, the government is responsible for the statements that they bring forward to the House. Now, if that is the end of the points of order, I'll allow the front benches, if they wish to shuffle over. Everyone else should leave the chamber if they wish to do so very quietly and very quickly. Mr. Philp, are you leaving? Are you staying? Mr. Philp, are you... Go. Wonderful. No, of course. Programme motion to be moved formally.
I beg to move.
The question is, as on the order paper, has many that opinion say aye?
Aye.
Of the contrary, no? I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it. The clerk will now proceed to read the orders of the day.
Armed Forces